I'm going to talk about meditation. Now, people sometimes ask me about meditation, and I always point out that I'm not a meditation teacher. I have my experiences of meditation, my thoughts about it, but I don't have that interaction of knowing other people's experiences. And a good meditation teacher shouldn't just give out, but should actually have a feeling of what's going on in the other person's mind and respond to it. So I'm not that. On the other hand, there are plenty of books, online courses, and all sorts of things about meditation nowadays I've seen. And so I'm not trying to fill that gap. If you want to meditate and you haven't done it before, go to the proper sources. All I'm doing is sharing some of my experiences. Now, when I first started in the 50s, a distinction was made between meditation and contemplation. And I don't hear those terms used in the same way now, so I better explain. Basically, meditation is a turning inward, and contemplation is a turning outward. Ultimately, they go towards a similar aim, as we should say, like two ways of going up the same mountain. But it does start with a fundamental difference of approach. I've probably done more contemplation in my life because I've tended to live in rather beautiful surroundings, and to be in nature, it's rather more natural to open yourself up and contemplate than it is to shut your eyes, turn in and meditate. I also, in my book of How to See Fairies, I begin by recommending contemplation, and later on I'll come to why I recommend that as a starting point. So, contemplation is about turning outward. I'll qualify that later because it's also inward. But it's about the senses, tuning into the senses. And typically you would sit comfortably, relax, and then open up your senses one by one, and then all together. Sitting, well, with both meditating and contemplating, of course you can lie down, you can sit in different postures and things like that. But basically, you want to be comfortable, and lying down can too easily go into sleep. People always say relax, and it isn't quite that, because of course if you're choosing to sit in a comfortable chair, you can't totally relax because you will just collapse. So what is it? An expression we used to use was poise. It's like you're sitting in a balanced, secure way, but with no unnecessary tension in your muscles. So you can sort of run over your body and feel if there's unnecessary tension. Adjust your position if necessary until you get that place of poise. Then you start the contemplation. And it's best to start one sense at a time to really experience them. And I think the best starting place is touch, because there you are sitting in a chair. Now, if you were going to sort of get to work or something like that, you would soon forget the chair, soon forget your posture, and just concentrate on what you're attending to. But here, you feel the chair. You feel your clothes when they touch your skin. If there's a breeze, you feel that. You're totally aware of your senses. And you try not to focus. If there's an itch on one leg, which normally you would either focus on in order to get rid of it or focus away from in order to ignore it, you just receive that itch like every other feeling. Now, when I talk about turning outward, I really mean turning out the senses, because of course the senses also work inwards too. You might have a very slight indigestion or something. I normally would try to ignore that because you want to contemplate. know that is just as much a sensation as everything else. So you become aware of your indigestion, any slight discomfort. You become aware of tension in your muscles, so you try to relax them to keep that poise, and so on. Two easy ones, because they're a bit sort of oversimple, are taste and smell. Taste in particular, unless you just happen to have had a drink or eaten something, probably if you move your tongue around, there isn't any particular taste there. But be aware of there not being any particular taste. Become conscious of looking for taste in your mouth. And smell. Now, smell for dogs is a very sensitive and very all-encompassing sense, but for us it's not very much. We come into a room and we smell the room. Someone lights a fire, we smell, but in a short while we no longer notice it. We get so used to a particular smell. Yes, you smell the air just to see if there's anything. And again, as with the taste, if you can't smell anything, well, you're smelling nothing. Now we get to the more difficult ones. Hearing. Because hearing is so much more vivid for us. There are sounds all around. And there's a tendency to focus. If you're listening to a radio play or music, you may not notice a distant murmur of conversation or sound of the wind and things like that. You block them out. Now we're trying to open up fully to all those senses, all those hearings we hear. A motorbike goes past, something like that. Now, what you're trying to do is to experience and sense, and you're trying not to put labels onto it. This is an important part of the contemplation. So, you hear a motorbike go past. Sounds like a Japanese bike. That's labels. What you try to do is just experience that vibration, rumble, 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 or snarl, 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 as pure sensation. And that isn't easy because we've got words for all these things. That's the wind. That's a bird chirping. But you're working towards trying to just have experiences without putting labels on. And that is the more difficult way that contemplation is working towards. And when it comes to sight, it's especially difficult because our whole thing of sight is, we've got these extra sensitive bits in the center of our vision, so that if I say, have you read this, you will turn to look at exactly what I'm talking about. You focus in. Now when I say open up your sense of sight, I am telling you to try not to focus on just what's in front of you, me on the screen. Because if you open up, you realize that you can actually see things almost 180 degrees. Although you can't see those ones very clearly, you actually have total peripheral vision, up and down as well. I'm looking at the screen now, but I can see my knees, and I can see the sky above me. So what you're trying to do is to, as with sound, be sort of totally engulfed in vision. It's all around you. Now, say there is this problem that sight is specifically designed to focus. And so one thing you can do is to just slightly cross your eyes and hold them in that slightly crossed position. Try not to make too tension of it, but just relaxed, so that you weaken that sense of focus and become more just open to everything that's around you. Now, one of the things that differentiate, saying you're turning out or turning in, you might think, what happens if you close your eyes? Does it mean there's nothing? Of course, you realize it isn't, because when you shut your eyes, you also see images. And the same thing with sound. Remember I said with touch, you're trying to feel everything, including internal feelings. They're all part of touch. Well, for sound, here am I listening to the beauties of nature and the wind of the trees and the birds and everything around me. Actually, one of the loudest sounds is my tinnitus. That is something which is always there, and I get used to ignoring it. I forget it's there. But if I really am upping up sound, I hear my tinnitus too. It's all part of that sort of engulfing sensation. So, what you're going for is real openness, as opposed to focus. Openness of all the senses. I've gone through them one by one, but you now try to be open to all of them. Taste and smell is pretty easy, but to combine hearing, sight, and touch all at the same time, it's quite challenging, but it's worth trying. What you're trying to remove is the attention, which takes the form usually of words or knowledge, which has been given to us. There is a high-pitched sound which modulates, and you call it a bird. But try not to do that. Try just to experience the sound. And even as I say, a sound that modulates, again it's words. How far can you go towards pure awareness? That is what you're reaching towards. The aim is to have pure experience without labeling, analysis, or judgment. And it's difficult because after a while you find you are labeling things and you are thinking of other things, your mind has wandered. Now in my book, How to See Fairies, I gave a walking meditation, which is an extension of that, which I found was very powerful. And that is you do it while you're walking. Again, ideally a walk in a nice place, garden, park or something, or in nature. And what you're doing is holding that very vivid, total sense of what is around you. There's a gate. No, it isn't a gate. It's just a series of parallel wooden lines. No, it isn't. It isn't parallel wooden lines. Those are words. It's just a sensation. Something you see. But you hold these very vivid impressions everywhere you walk and look. And then, inevitably, you suddenly find you're down the path thinking about what you're going to cook for lunch. The difference here is that you can remember the last vivid sensation you had. A gate. And you can turn around and walk back to it. Now this is bringing an element of sort of discipline into your thing, because you make yourself walk back to the last clear sensation and start again. Now of course, the way this works, when you're halfway back, you find your mind has wandered again. So you think back to the point where you had your last clear sensation, you go back to that, and then forward again. So you may be going backwards and forwards forever on the same spot. But the point is, it's a sort of discipline which actually I found was powerful. It sharpened this ability to be fully aware and in the moment, became stronger at it. And so I recommended that in the book, How to See Fairies, walking meditation. What you're going towards is a state of inner silence. It's receptive. Nothing is being generated by the mind. It's all coming into you, mostly from outside, but also from your body as well. But not mind, not thoughts. It's pure perception, freed from all the labels that other people have given us, we've learnt over our lifetimes. So in a way, it's like a baby or an infant's view of the world, where things are wonderful and surprising, and yet they're also not surprising, because every new thing that happens is simply a new thing happening. That's what you're going towards in contemplation. Now, meditation seems to begin very differently, because you're going inwards. Typically, you do things to reduce the input. You might try, because you don't have to have a quiet place, because if you're a good meditator, you can meditate anywhere, in any conditions. But it's sensible to begin with a quiet place, and with your eyes shut. But remember what I said before, it's all very well to think with your eyes shut that you're not seeing anything, but of course you see images. So in fact, many people say you should actually have a hooded gaze, your eyes half open, and you're gazing down, so that you are not looking around, you're just minimizing the input to your eyes. And your techniques, like many people would put the tip of their tongue up to the roof of the mouth, the soft palate, and hold it there. Two reasons. One is that it reduces the tendency to feel for taste, but also in some forms of meditation, like circulating the light, it forms a bridge for what one might call the energy to flow back down, having gone up the back and down. So there are various reasons for that, but it's a thing I quite often do, simply put my tongue to my soft palate. And another thing you can do is put your fingers into a mudra. And there's a whole, you can get books on mudras with different purposes, things like that. I mean, there's this position. One I tend to do is one like that, where these fingers are touching and these like that. Just so I tend to do it. It means you're holding your hands in one fixed position, so there's no sort of distraction from feeling things or things like that. So all that is part of closing down the senses in order to turn in. Now, according to Israel Regardie, Crowley's short form definition of meditation is sit down, shut up, get out. This is really a very basic meditation. Sitting down, shutting up, and getting out of the world. Now, of course, as you do that, thoughts start arising. Partly, as in contemplation, you hear sounds around that, make you think of things like that. And you're trying to reduce that. Now, very early on, meditation teachers say, people say, I must not think. No. You can't, because they say, I must not think, you're thinking. It's what you actually, it's fair enough to start trying not to think. That's a fair enough thing to do, if only because it shows you how difficult that is, just how natural it is to think. So, try not to think, and you find that you are thinking. Now, progress comes from just observing that you're thinking, not condemning yourself. Oh, blast, I'm thinking again. Just, I'm thinking about lunch. Now, if you simply observe the thoughts, like as you're standing back and seeing them arising, that actually weakens their power. and they tend to fade out and become a little less and a little less. And what you're trying to hold on is that observing state, rather than getting into the thought. Thinking about lunch becomes anticipating the actions you're going to take, the taste of it. You're getting into it, and then you're no longer meditating. But realizing that you're thinking about lunch and observing yourself doesn't overwhelm you in the same way. And so that's a good way of sort of reducing it. The other thing is actually try to distract thinking by doing something. And there's a whole lot of meditation techniques, like breathing practices, where you count 4 heartbeats breathing in, 4 heartbeats holding your breath, 4 heartbeats breathing out, 4 heartbeats empty. There's a whole lot of instructions you can find about different types of meditation, and some of them are to have a particular effect. But in the simple meditation that I'm talking about, really you just want to breathe naturally and comfortably, not force yourself to do anything. So how do you distract thinking? Well, one is to very much concentrate on breathing. Feel it coming in, the sensation of it. Feel your breath going out and the warmer feeling of it coming out of your nose, the cooler as it goes in. That focus is giving your mind something to chew on, like a dog to chew on a bone, rather than just sort of start meandering in your thoughts. You're experiencing breath, so it's a bit like a sort of inner contemplation at that stage. Another thing you can do is a mantra. If you find your mind is so busy, something like that. Now the difficulty I have with that is that, well, first of all, usually I don't want to be saying it out loud. I don't want people walking past and say, "Excuse me, what did you say?" So even when I'm on my own, I do the mantra in my head. And the other thing is that linking the mantra, making a rhythm with the mantra and the breathing, means that I want a rather longer mantra than just Om. What do you do when you're breathing in? And one that I use is the Om Namah Shiva, because for me it's about the right length of a breath. And I remember some people did a sung version of it, which goes like this: Om Namah Shiva, Om Namah Shiva, Om Namah Shiva, Shiva Om Namah. Now that is about right for me, because it's about the length of a breathing in, a breathing out, a breathing in, and a breathing out. And so I sometimes do that. Now I'm doing it to try to dampen down thinking. So to start with, I almost say it out loud. In other words, and I even see the words as though I was reading on paper. If I'm really trying to stop myself thinking hard, I sort of make it very, very vivid like that. And it tends to reduce this tendency to be thinking. And then after a while, you find you don't have to visualize it. You just verbalize it in your head. Now, after a bit later, as you begin to quieten down, you can stop, as it were, saying it and just hear it as though it's in the distance, and then eventually you can go to silence. Just simply a technique to try to produce something stronger than all these thoughts that are buzzing around in your head. As I mentioned, that there are various things you can do in terms of structured breathing, particular ins and outs, and different ways of breathing and all that, which you'll find in a book on yoga, And that is an addition, which I'm not going to deal with. Another thing is this circulating the light, where picture energies of going up your spine as you breathe in and down into your solar plexus in time with each breath. There are exercises like that you can do. But to me, these are all extras, because really what you're going for is a sort of inner silence, an inactivity, which is not very different from that sort of awareness of contemplation. It's a sort of, a silent place, a stillness, perhaps the best word. And one question then is where do you focus that feeling? And there are many suggestions, some say on the third eye, focus your attention on the third eye. Some on your heart, in New Agers, very much, focus energy on your heart. The problem for any internal focus for me, and this is just me perhaps, is it can be distracting. If I focus on my heart, I can begin to notice my heartbeats. You can notice they're not quite regular. Oh my God, am I having a heart attack? If I focus in my head, say behind the third eye there, I really focus on that. I begin to think, might I be sending so much blood to that point with my concentration that I'm going to have a stroke? Sort of fears, you begin to notice too much inside your body. So I tend to, if I'm going to focus, I focus slightly outside of my body. The good point is just below your nostrils. So you breathe in, imagine the air sort of floating past that point. Breathe out, floating past, feeling warm enough. Or else just above the crown chakra, just above the top of your head. Those are good places to focus for me, and they get me sort of out of the body. A good principle, which I refer to a lot in the, God, what is that, fly, is the principle of watch the watcher, judge the judge, observe the observer. You see, in contemplation or in meditation, you are watching your thoughts, or you're watching all that's around you. And what is this thing that's watching? Well, the fact that you're aware there's something watching means that there is a watcher watching that watcher. And so you can begin a sort of going back step by step. How is it that you are aware that you're watching the watcher? Because there's something else behind, and you're sort of moving more and more into the abstract. And that's a useful exercise I've found, which is quite helpful. Another thing is interesting phenomena. Now, this is an interesting subject. One of the things, particularly when meditating, is you can find your, as it were, floating into light. Sometimes when this happens, I've opened my eyes thinking, wow, what's happened? The sun has come out or something, and nothing's happened. Just suddenly everything around seems to get so light. Another thing can happen is that you could float out of your body and feel that you're somewhere up there. Now these are rather wonderful when this happens, rather exciting. And it's tempting to be proud of that and think, wow, I'm getting somewhere with my meditation. But if your meditation is just simply to sit down, shut up and get out, it doesn't say keep meditating until you see light, or keep meditating until you find you're out of your body. You're actually experiencing something which is not supposed to be in the meditation. So a sudden feeling of surrounded by light is, in a way, just as distracting as a motorbike going past and catching your attention. It's something happening which wasn't part of the original intention. So try to do the same thing. Okay, be aware that there's light, but not to be attached to it. You see, the problem is that and it's very natural, if you're very excited about the fact you've entered this glowing light, it usually doesn't happen the next time. It's not like you've mastered it. You've like learning to ride a bicycle. It'll always happen now because I've learned how to do it. Very often it doesn't happen for a while, and then you begin to feel your meditation has deteriorated. Oh dear, I'm not as good as I was. I've lost the knack. Totally not the right thing to do. Just experience these things that happen and don't attach to them at all. One other thing that I find particularly useful actually is whether meditating or contemplating is this relaxation. Now, as I've said, it's more a poise than relaxation. And very early on you reach a good relaxed state in your body. But it's very easy not to be relaxed in the head, particularly when an interesting phenomenon is happening. If you put your attention back to your face, typically you'll find that your eyes have tensed up a bit, or your mouth is like that, and you're in this marvelous state, but there's deliberately relax your mouth, your eyes. Keep your head, all the muscles in your face relaxed. And sometimes the phenomenon melts away, but that's okay. The point is that it's very easy to be having a very good meditating experience when actually you're sort of forcing it, and that shows in the tension on your face. And if you can, preferably without destroying the experience, if you can just remember to relax your face. And in fact, you're probably relaxing everywhere you do that, because the face is the most sensitive sort of measuring instrument of tension. So relax your face and continue with the meditation. Okay, which is best, contemplation or meditation? Of course, as I say, two ways of climbing the same mountain. I like to do both. I find that the walking exercise contemplation is the best way to get to an inner stillness, and so it's the most powerful, if you like, and that helps with meditation, so it's a very good thing to do. When you reach that inner stillness, and you're fairly comfortable with it, you're watching your thoughts or whatever's outside, it's possible actually to do quite a lot of thinking. Because you're watching yourself thinking, it's a very natural activity. A lot of what I'm saying to you now, I actually thought about last time I was meditating. But it wasn't ruining the meditation, because it was just, I was sort of watching myself thinking, and thinking to myself, like the observer would say, thinking is a very natural thing for you to do, Lana. So do it. Just don't get attached to it. Don't get lost in it. Don't forget that you're here because you got lost in the thought. Just watch the thoughts coming up. And they're not so dominant then. It hasn't kidnapped your attention. So what is the value of contemplation and meditation? Well, it's an achievement. You set out to do something and you've done it. That's always worth something. I find it gives me a sense of equanimity, balance. Like comparing contemplation and meditation, a better balance between the inner and the outer. I see them as part of a continuum. You don't make this sharp distinction, or that's inner, that's outer. It's a continuum. Now, an interesting point is, why did I begin How to See Fairies, which is a book about learning clairvoyance and clairaudience, learning to be clairvoyant, basically. Why did I begin it? By asking people to focus on their senses, and become more aware. Now, a skeptic might say, surely if you're going to sort of see loony fairies and things that don't exist, you ought to be putting people into a trance, shouldn't you? Not making them more open and aware. And that, I think, is very not true. And so I do intend to follow this up with a second discussion where I talk about why becoming more aware, more conscious, is actually important for developing magic.